Yo, we meet again. Uh, I very extensively analyzed uh, grammatically and mathematically what truth means. And that is all fine and well that I can tell, but I also need to be able to show it. So this is an amassing of what I've found to have helped me restabilize myself in a thoroughly changing world, um, and to stay grounded in it. But it also serves as a bit of an experiment. Years ago, I saw this physics seminar. Um, they were able to prove that they could influence emotion and action. Someone had brought up its repercussions, and they stated that they can create emotional stimulation and responses. They cannot create consciousness. And depending on what you believe, I do think consciousness is maybe something that we don't fully understand yet. And in ancestral modalities and in occult modalities, I think can be whittled down to love. I think in technology is being really found to be more about perception. And so I think that is untrue. And I think in a non-dual perspective, you are in fact absolutely able to uh, influence right back. Um, in a non-dual perspective, it's not a one-way street. It is in fact a two-way highway. And so if we are being influenced by these things, then we are able to also influence it back. And so this is an experiment to facilitate a safer and more secure connection to the self in the face of these things. But so in that, but truth if it were, and spirit all the same, maybe justice by any other name. This is my opportunity to illustrate it. And not just through the medicine wheel, which I did talk about, but the ways in which that circle is also a blooming of layers. And that is something called the Pancha Kosha, which is very much that space deconstructed, and the layers of ourselves sort of peeled. So again, we take a journey uh, through the self and to spirit and to find ourselves again. The first layer on the Panchakosha is the Annamaya Kosha, and that is an external most layer. Um, that is very much the construction of the wheel. And so I think politically, superficially, we have to dig into this very deeply because it is very much the things that we see in order to believe. It is the most extraneous parts of our perception. And so I think, let me illustrate this as thoroughly as possible. Yes? So we are, in fact, reinventing the wheel. And why was the wheel invented? There's endless books about industrialization being the key to humanity's survival and progression. But interestingly enough, in something called a mental health index or census, there's various different ones. They study exactly this and the disconnection in a way. Industry has not brought us peace very clearly. In fact, it's brought us war. I've tried to explain this perspective and in fact was met with disbelief, and disbelief that was grasping for war without really realizing it. From a veteran, no less. Industry has not preserved people. Story has. Stories much like this one, with multiple components that we can assemble and disassemble and reassemble. And somewhere in this disconnect is a story that we are missing. Not that we do not have it, but that we cannot see it. Therefore, we do not believe in it. This is a frequency perspective, which, even if you don't like the woo woo conversation, dogs and cats see in different frequencies. The idea of the radio exists, the thing of the radio exists because of the idea of frequency, because we discovered that there was electromagnetic waves, and we tapped into that and we felt it was music. these are the things that have made us to be as we can see it. And that, I think, is the idea of heaven on earth, and exactly why they have us chasing it about. It's very much about a return to source, but the ways in which we understand source are fundamentally different and require definition. Oftentimes we see that as food, but again, in learning language, um, source was more closely defined in Telegi as mineral, which actually has fractal crystalline elements to it. So interesting matrix qualities. But also, if it is mineral, then take, for instance, the mineral mining industry and the ways in which that it is an exploitational outsourcing and a destabilizing of the very lands that it is sourcing it from. And this is the ways, in a literal way, the ways in which we feed ourselves, but it is not nourishing, which is ironically so. In the search of resource, we walk further from the source and blame it for dimming, despite access to resource. Countries on the highest end of the mental health index and quality of life meter, where things like accessibility to education, accessibility to healthcare, proper work-life balance, um, are factors uh, that are analyzed. Despite those statistics, some countries that place very high on that are statistically still overwhelming in suicide rates. So there's something that we're missing there. What is it that they are looking for, or what have they given up on being able to find? Um, Conversely, the Dominican Republic also placed very high on certain aspects of it, but in other censuses, you are more likely to find a lack of political justice, an overwhelm of political unrest of its own putrefaction, for sure. Um, there's also something new that's like a freedom census and how free a people are. And that's something that I think is an interesting rabbit hole to dig into. All searchable terms, you can do your own research. To double down on the food concept, these are the ways in which that diet culture prevails, that supplement culture prevails, when ironically so they do very much the opposite. Most supplements, even protein supplements, will have this anti-caking agent that actually slows down your digestive system, so you're not actually able to absorb the nutrients that it's advertising as you getting specifically from it. Um, Diet culture is also very much problematic, a problematic part of the visual, tangible, earthy perception that we have of the world, an unsustainable one at that. A lot of what we're served is a lot of the food that we have access to, especially in certain demographics, are not nourishing by any means. There's a city in Colorado that was established as a sort of experimental town, capitalizing on this sort of diet culture where all of these things were accessible, but were people happy and healthy? No, in fact, eating disorders um, skyrocketed. I believe the statistic was triple the time, 300% increase, and was affecting children younger and younger. On Even for as much as we have this overwhelming wellness culture and self love and self help culture, self harm has actually done very much the same, and is affecting children younger and younger. And my heart very much goes out to that. The Annamaya Kosha isn't just about what you physically intake either, though it is, I think, very earthy dominated, and though it is very literally taken as food in Western appropriations, it's also very much the context in which those things are received. it's the experience one is having while receiving those things. There's various different scientific studies that were done. One in which I can think of that was like high caloric foods given to rabbits, but they were pet and they were adored in one group, and they were ignored in another group. And the ones that were more adored, or were stroked or were calmed or were pet during their feeding, were actually able to digest and metabolize that caloric intake at a much higher rate, and one that was not detrimental or adverse to their health in any way. It is also a scientific fact that your neurological system doesn't know the difference between food and thought. And stressing yourself out, restricting what it is that you're intaking, you're slowing down your digestive system, you're stressing your body out, you're telling it that it needs to hold on to these things, and ultimately your body is going to do exactly that. This is a very ancestral. This is in a very ancestral practice as well. The idea of blessing your water, and mindfully taking in your water is not just about saying grace to some dude in the sky. It is about infusing that with the nourishment that your cellular makeup is going to understand. That's another dot I'll connect later on, what the woo woo call organized water, and what science calls structured water. Um, it's all semantics, but they are very much the same thing. The integrity of that structure and its intake. And again, the way that your neurological system is going to fully digest those things. Interestingly enough, doctors and science are still very confused about things like your appendix and its function in your digestive system. And that is, I think, very much in part because our digestive system is, in fact, digesting much more than just food and minerals and tangible nutrients, but also the experiences that are adorning those things. Another layer of the Annamaya Kosha that I think is incredibly paramount is just that, the physical body layer, the extraneous limb of the flesh, and not just your skin and its fascia and its interwoven and interconnectedness in every organ in your body, but also the sex organs. Though we cannot be shy in acknowledging that the holes are where the light gets in, um, I do think that the gendering of yoga with the physical body in practices like Western romancing of Tantra is an ultimate disservice to it. I think gendered yoga informs placing constructed power in a very physical sense, and associating it directly with the body fails to allow the divine structure to give form to the formless. I think it is a very callous layer that fails to grow. And I think that is often why many of us have this visceral experience of wanting to split at the seams, because we're forcing multiple energies into a singular box. I think in this way, it's also all about how to get power, not be power. And that is a big problem for me. I don't get my power from my body. My body is powerful because I am powerful. I don't get my validation. I don't get my energy from this physical thing. This physical thing is all the more because of the power that is inside of it. And 100% as a queer person, that also took me a wild time to see, because it does also accept me as me. If you didn't know, lovers and friends use they or he pronouns with me. The rest of the world may use she at times, but that is because they have their own perceptions. The way I see it, you can call me whatever you want, but it tells me more about your perception and your ability to see a specific wave frequency than it does about me. But it never takes away from my experience of myself. It just shows me where they are at. And so, again, in this severe external layer of Annamaya Kosha, um, I do acknowledge that I get misgendered a lot, which I think is a symptom of a society trained to categorize and compartmentalize, um, so much so that it's turned into this obsessive, unconscious compulsion to see genitals where a face should be. Years ago, when I first researched this, it was considered a sign of schizophrenia to see sound as color or faces in trees. So synesthesia or face pareidolia. Now that is different. Now, if you look it up, it says that it's much more common, that it's less suggestive, more research needs to be done, da, 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 which is, while that's regarded as still so strange, or even the idea of an internal monologue is so, wild to people. But the idea of seeing a person and in that moment picturing what parts of them are private is in fact, I think, a symptom of again, a society trained to categorize and compartmentalize. And I don't think that is a worthy skill to have. I think that is the ways in which, again, reference the anatomy of the truth, have constructed a reality just um, so as to keep us from understanding the unified power that we all possess internally. That I think the most feminine thing you can do is create, and the most masculine thing you can do is protect and honor that creation. And that occurs simultaneously. Artists do that constantly, drag queens, writers, uh, people that have been wildly creative and also told no, that that is not a worthy creation, have had to choose to honor and protect that creation and also to continue to create. And that is a unified experience of both masculine and feminine energies. That is a unified understanding where that hard, callous exterior shell suddenly has breathing room, suddenly has room to grow. Suddenly, you aren't going to split at the seams because you are formless power that chose this form for any one reason or another, but that doesn't negate the experiences before. These things and their the intakes, whether that be compulsive eating or compulsive restriction or unconscious binging or obsessive viewing, whatever that may be. All of these things also make up the Annamaya Kosha. All of these things make up the Annamaya Kosha. All of these things are our outermost layer. All of these things are our outerwear jacket, so to speak. And not just the bad things, but the good things. All of the good things that we do to ourselves too. Every bit of our identity, every bit of who we are and who we think we are in this lifetime, not even just the other ones. All of that is also the Annamaya Kosha. And again, the fascia and the sensory experience and the electrical relationships that we have in the world, all of that and its interpretations are what feeds every layer underneath this. Pancha Kosha, we have 5 layers, 5 sheets, 5 illusions, 5 layers of untruth. Because yes, the bad things, but also the good things are not all that is, are not you. The Pancha Kosha is finding the I am and understanding the I am not. So even the best things of us, those are external layers that, what if they were stripped, what would that look like? What would that feel like? What would that be? And that is what we're here to explore and discover and move through in a feeling way, not just in an intellectual way. Although I obviously have a lot of things to say. And so with that, I very much appreciate you being here. I very much appreciate you clicking that at all, let alone sticking around this far. I hope it's been shocking to say the least, and it will ultimately be thoroughly rewarding through all of those layers again and again and again, because this has continuously been rewarding for me. So, hello and hi, and let's move through those things. I'm Blair, if you didn't know that. And I am also from Chicago, so I'm practicing on Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Maiamia, Sioux, and Peoria lands. Please do me a favor and figure out what lands you are on and connecting to, because again, in Annamaya Kosha, I do think that's one of the external most layers of our social setting, and that is a very hidden one where perhaps we understand where we are, but we do not understand what is acknowledging the land that we are on and acknowledging the land that we are, and in peeling back the Annamaya Kosha. Rather than with a closed intention, I do prefer the openness of devotion. May we open our deconstruction of the circle with gratitude, be it a silent thank you or appreciation in whatever language your space speaks. Daninika Koyika. I'm grateful for today. With breaths that follow, allow gratitude and its openness to expand around you, wherever it is that you may be. I have a yoga mat. It is also not entirely necessary. You could probably function just as well with a long pashmina or a bath towel, or a carpet, or preferably grass. Um, However, I did get this for a super reasonable price from Isha Life, Isha Yoga Life Center. And it's beautiful and natural rubber, and is by far one of the coolest things. Um, but wherever it is you are, whatever it is you're finding, whatever resources you have, because you have all you need is a space. All you need is a space. All you need is a space. Come to that space, and we're gonna work through some very basic Sun A, Sun B, Sun C kind of things. That will be easy to replicate, and also easy to replicate while also being able to forefront this as well as other layers as we move through them. So we'll come to a far point on wherever it is that you are. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to realign. Noted. There we go. That's much better. Look at us go. Front point of your space with a back point that's about as equal far away from you, right? Stellar. Maintaining a steady breath from gratitude. And in a moment of stillness, it's not about motion yet, but stabilizing points and parallel lines and affirmations and agreements of the space that we take up, in its most extraneous, superficial, linear way, right? So we're thinking external structure, Annamaya Kosha. Your feet are about hip distance apart. Your shoulders are just gently stacked over your hips and your ankles. If you close your eyes and you kind of think of it as light points, then you'll feel not only your sway maybe more intensely, but sort of visualize those points sort of lighting up when they come into a stacked relation. Take a deep breath in, lifting the chest, rolling the shoulders back, finding expansion and expression there. Take a deep breath in, allowing the chest to expand, and on the exhale, tucking the rib cage into a greater alignment with the hips. Take a deep breath in, and allow soft bend in your knees to keep your body fluid and buoyant. And exhale, allow your pelvis to tilt just so that it is underneath your ribs. And again, you can visualize these points lighting up underneath the hips and our soft and buoyant knees. Drive your heels into the ground, noticing what that fires off and allows to restabilize your structure from the ground up. Through the steadiness of your breath, allow any adjustments as you move. Last but certainly not least, and I have found that there are interesting science journals about these exact points and innervations and their significance. I always just thought it was lights that went off in my head. There are 3 major points of stability in your feet. This is also why I wear tabby shoes. But this is not a paid advertisement. Think that ball just by your pinky toe, that ball underneath your big toe, and that heel. We felt our body shifted when we drove our heels into the ground. Now, that point's lit up. Light up those other 2 points and allow, if you reach your toes up to the sky and allow them to grip the ground, feel that triangulation occur in points of stability, and realize how much more, or recognize how much more structure you have moving from the ground up. You might even notice that there's maybe warming or tension on your shin bones or at the sides of your knees, and those are in fact because we're firing nerve endings that are often not firing because the shoes that we wear are designed to destabilize our structure. But I digress. Take a deep breath in and allow those lights to get even brighter. This is our bottom structure. Top up also has these same light points, oftentimes in many forms, but oftentimes, and most notably so, in our shoulders. Knowing fully how it feels in your body, and without me explaining every minutiae, every minute detail, you have 3 major points of stability in your feet. Activate, pinky toe, big toe, heel, and feel how that restructures your calves, your quads, your hips, and suggests to the rib cage. Likewise, we bring the hands over the head, we bring the palms to meet, we bring the meat of the palms nearest to behind the head while maintaining the integrity of connection without overpowering one energy or the other. Bring the meaty part of our palms nearest behind our head and release. Over time, it does get easier. Over time, you find more flexion. If you would like to find more bite, I'm directing the elbows outward. Also finds some new heat to it. But ultimately, in that release, your shoulders find a whole new lease on life. Inline chest, inline ribs, inline pelvis. Feet up, shoulders, hands down. This is an ideal posturing structure. If you struggle with posture, doing just this, doing rounds of this is going to help you find a stable structure. But so, we move forward. The whys we do things. Even just in doing any given mobility or movement practice, why is it that we find ourselves there? What is it we're showing up for? We're trying to show up for ourselves in some sort of healing context, and that comes with understanding all of that. And we haven't even moved from where we are, but don't you feel so much more aware? So we find that again. Inhale, palms up, and they meet, 2 holy palms kiss. Exhale, bring the palms to the nearest point of the back of the head. Inhale, you can bring your palms back up, turn up to the sky, and release. And we're going to follow our palms all the way down with a stable hinge in just the pelvis, and keeping a gentle bounce in our knees so that we are not forcing an L shape or anything, and a gentle bend in our knees so as not to overstretch our hamstrings. This whole touch the toes moment oftentimes we get way too caught up in what it's supposed to look like rather than what it's supposed to feel like. As flexible as people think I may be too, I still got a healthy bend in my knees, and I could even go deeper. Again, parallel lines. The most comfortable you can be is if you can find a meeting place with your stomach or where your ribs are and where your thighs meet. If you got healthy thighs, then they should be easy to find. Or parallel lines meet parallel lines, and this is the beginning of a suggestion of truth on our discovery of it. Our palms to the ground, our feet are flat, or maybe our palms aren't to the ground. Maybe they're only on our shins. Maybe they're only on our knees, because we want to maintain a flat back and we want to maintain peace here rather than overreaching these hamstrings. You don't want to be shaking, because shaking means your body does not feel safe. If I'm forcing this fold and my legs are quivering, then I'm forcing my body into this position. I'm telling my body that it is not safe there. Medical science goes to show that about 60 seconds in any given stretch will help to recalibrate the fascial memory of whether or not this position is safe. So sometimes that means being here for a bit. Sometimes that means being just away from where you think you want to be for long enough that it becomes easy. And so we've reached our forward fold in one way or another. Correct? Perhaps it looks like this. Perhaps it looks like this. On an inhale, you can roll your shoulders back. Maybe walk your hands up so that your chest can feel elevated rather than you looking at your toes. And on the exhale, we can come back to the ground, find whatever stability you need in your hands so that you can relieve your feet of their duties, and find a knee. Find both knees. Find both knees. We've got palms directly under shoulders, and we've got knees pretty much more or less under my hips. I can't really see. And from here, to my favorite thing, I would suggest widening your knees even. You can kind of have a little triangle here, so that this act of going down is easier and easier, or is not something that's a point of strain. We still want stability, we still want balance, but we do have to acknowledge where our bodies want some amendments, or want some accommodations. Now we'll move through this structure, but keep in mind, it is your body, therefore your choice and your rules. So if you do find you need restructuring in order to provide stability, acknowledge that there is always room for accommodation, and paying attention to those things will also shed some light on where you are overcompensating. Overcompensating is where we get into sciatica and things like that. Accommodation is where we can be more preventative to things like that, and a little bit more conscious of movement and how it influences these things. Widen out your knees or draw them back a little bit, because we're going to keep our shoulders right under here, and ideally all I want is a bend in the elbows. I promise you it's not going to be for terribly long. We keep our knees straight, our feet are flat, we've got stability, stability, stability. We keep our back straight, we bend the elbows, we come all the way to the ground. See, not too bad. The slower you go, the more it'll bite, but we want our chest to the ground, we want our chin to the ground, we want our palms on our hands just to the side of our chest area, and our knees and the tops of our feet flat. Now, mine is pretty intense, but it obviously doesn't have to be that intense. What you are going to focus on is pushing into your palms and pushing up, like pushing on a horizontal plane up, so pushing toward your face. And then with the tip of your tailbone, you're going to focus on pushing that the opposite direction on the same plane. So I would be pushing my tailbone more toward my toes or toward my feet. For the wall, really. We're going to keep the same trajectory. So you push forward with your palms, draw your tailbone backward, and notice how you'll feel. Notice how you'll feel your scapula draw down, your spine elongate, and that any compression in your lower back is finding alleviation. If you do feel compression in your lower back, then you want to draw that tailbone down. Perhaps you need to bring your knees more down so that you have more articulation in that area, because this is where we want to be in some variation. Take a big inhale here, and on the exhale, you can drop everything down. We're going to keep our palms in the same positioning because you're going to look directly down at the mat so that your back of your skull and the length of your spine feels like they're on parallel planes. Again, a suggestion of a new truth. And we're going to do the same thing with our palms and press into the mat and drive it forward toward the tips of our fingers and the tips of our nose. And again, feel the lengthening on our neck, the draw down in our shoulders, and all of that tingling and activation and heat release. And don't forget about the tailbone in this scenario either. You are still able to articulate the pelvis and draw the tailbone toward the toes. Perhaps that means there's a slight rotation in your pelvis, or a dramatic one, who knows. Perhaps that means you'll feel your pelvic bone kind of drive into the ground. But ideally, as long as you feel that lengthening along the lower back, the thoracic spine, and along the crack of your booty, honestly, like all the way up to the tip of the tailbone. And feel how active your arms are, even without necessarily doing what looks like much. And we can release tension for a minute. Release tension for a second. We're gonna press into our palms, tuck our toes in, and drive our tailbone toward the sky. And again, perhaps there is accommodation necessary here rather than overcompensation. We want to keep our knees soft, keep our elbows fairly soft. By no means have to have your heels on the actual mat. However, the more you bend your knees, the more that might become plausible for you. Perhaps that means you walk in a little bit. You see how this doesn't necessarily look like, I don't know, what's on the cover of yoga magazines. And as far as your shoulders, your elbows, the eyes of your elbows are pretty much going to be looking at each other. Your palms are still going to be pushing forward so that you have grip. And with your shoulders, think reaching toward your wrists. And that'll give you just enough elongation so that you're not compacting into your shoulder blades. That's a big problem in positioning like this, where I think we're compacting and sort of dumping into our shoulders, and you breathe into them and you elongate them, and you should feel this decompression in your shoulders, but also into the side lengths of your body. If that is something that is hard for you to articulate, because this is really new for you, then you can just come down to your knees. You're going to reach farther forward. The meaty part of your palms really got in there. You're going to grip with your fingers as well. And as you send your body toward your hips to find an even length in your shoulders, pulling with your fingertips is how you're going to feel that scapula lift and separate forward so that you're not dumping into your back. It's very much like tectonic plates sort of moving on each other. And we have a tendency of doing this, and what we want to do is that. I hope that makes sense. So whether you're on your knees or whether you're on your tippy toes and bent knees in a downward facing dog, you can take a deep breath in. Acknowledge this position for the stability that it is and the housing that it creates for the vehicle that you are. And on the exhale, we're just going to walk our feet all the way to the top of the mat. And we can stay in acknowledgement of all of these stacked limbs. We feel the parallel quality of our thighs meeting our ribs, acknowledging our stacks of stability, stacks on stacks on stacks, what wealth we have here. We'll take a deep breath in and draw all of that energy up. Palms meet. And exhale, allow all of that energy to find its particulate place and acknowledgement in belief. That is a variation on a sun A. Sun B. With stability in our feet, sending energy upward. And with this healthy little micro bend in our knees, we're going to give that some healthier depth. Take our palms, deep breath in, bring our palms to the sky until palms meet and kiss. You'll notice your shoulders may also want to have a tendency to collapse again. We can bring our palms more fiercely together in a Venus grip, again, not overtaking or overpowering any energy, but finding a collaboration between. And what I like to do is a nice big inhale and exhale to find more length and more elongation, where your biceps are maybe more hugging your ears. And we find a healthy bend in our knees, wherever it is that doesn't make you want to slap yourself. Rather than poking our booty out in this and finding this drastic contortion, we want alignment in the upper spine and we want alignment in the lower spine. And that may feel weird because it's going to feel like you're tucking your butt quite a bit, but that's going to give you a very different sensation in doing this. So, okay, come back to it. Simultaneously, palms up to the sky, biceps hug your ears. We bend into our knees rather than stick our butt out. We tuck the booty and we sink into our knees and bring our palms to the ground, maintaining that very drastic bend so that we maybe even have more of our upper body resting on the tops of our thighs, right? From here, we can step back with both feet again to either knee into a healthy and stable tabletop, and whatever accommodations need to be made to find that balance and structure. On an inhale, you're going to bring your right foot forward. However it is that is easiest for you, and you're going to sweep it around the side. And that is a-okay, because we're going to do all of this on our knees. You want as much stability as you can. Maybe you have to use that same side hand to, and on that inhale, you're going to bolster yourself upright so that you have a nice sort of taking the knee position. Ideally, what you're going to want to pay attention to is where your hips are in this. It's a lot of right angles, right angle triangle. It's a lot of geometric truths, because it's a lot of right angles, right? You want your knee over your ankle. You're going to want your hip over your knee. The hardest part about this maybe will be balance for a little bit. Um, and you know, anything near you that you can help to bolster yourself or balance yourself in this, all the better. If you cannot tolerate it on your knees, by all means, throw a sweater, throw a blanket, throw a pillow on whatever it is that will make this sustainable and comfortable for you while we get to also analyze the structure, right? Your hips you want in a parallel line, ideally with your knees. This is a good point where you can kind of explore too and feel which hip is you know, protruding a bit more or compacting a bit more and overcompensating in that way. It's articulating your hips in situations like these that will help you understand and help them find fluidity in that junction. Does that make sense? This is also a point where you can be creative with the geometry of your own structure. So turning this back foot in at maybe about a 30-degree angle does help articulate my structuring a bit. I am activating different things in this leg, but I can feel this hip is strong and I can be balanced, and that's ultimately what I want, right? From here, we'll take a deep breath in, palms up to the sky, meet to holy palms kiss, and we'll drive the meat of our palms again back behind our heads, the back of the head, as much as we can. Perhaps it's getting a little bit more comfortable and you can at least rest your hands on the top of the back of your head, in which case you can find a little bit of extension in your elbows from that point and really feel the articulation in your hips. Feel, if you've got good alignment, you'll feel heat at the top of your shoulder blades and you'll feel heat in your hips. And it'll meet in the center of your back. You go here, you go here. When you're ready to release, on an exhale, bring your hands back to the sky. Palms will meet the ground and find a stable and slow and fluid way to return and chamber that knee and that leg back into its drive. From here, let's just bend those elbows, drop that chest down again so that we can relieve and extend and nurture that spine. And those hips can find their perfect placement again. Take a big inhale, exciting on that energy, and exhale, bring your hips down to the ground as well. Push into the ground with your palms. And reaching toward the tip of your nose, gaze down toward the infiniteless ground that is also pushing against us. You feel the back of your neck elongate, feel your shoulders drive down, your tailbone drive down, and the spine elongate. We'll push back into our palms, send our hips back up into our clever little tabletop, and we'll do the other side. Big breath in, and we'll use whatever comfortable and fluid means to get our front foot forward. However, 100%, the more you work on being able to bring it like directly forward, like in parallel line, the better for your joints. I, for one, definitely have like drag in one hip, I guess, that kind of always wants to like roundabout, rather than go straight. Or if I try to go straight, we'll try and like pull out. But the more that I in conscientiously try and drive it in that way, um, and try and find what's in the way, all the better for that joint and its tissue. Before all those nerve endings get really bundled, you know. But so we on an inhale, drive our knee upward so that our foot meets directly under our knee. Use the same side hand to bolster upwards so that we can find some sort of stability. Perhaps it is not all in perfect strength. Perhaps we bring this back foot in a slight degree so that we feel like we have stability in the back. Perhaps you just need to turn this front foot out ever so slightly so that you feel like you have stability there. This is not something you want to work in, but this is something that's going to help you get there. Again, the more you focus on alignment, all the better, because if you drive with this angle, you end up fucking up all of the nerves in the top of your foot, in your knee, and in your hip, and this leads to driver's knee and sciatica, etc., etc., etc. So, accommodate, don't compensate or overcompensate. But from here, we found our stability. We have parallel hips, and maybe that means we've got to do some adjustments and just some articulating. Find what does that movement even feel like for you? Do you even know what it means to be able to move your hips back and forth on a single horizontal plane? And if you find that you're drifting into the back here, then drive the top of your foot into the mat. That's going to activate your big toe, even. Uh, big toe specifically, and activate your glute, like flex your butt muscle. If you can make it bounce, then that's going to activate and straighten this back leg and drive into that back foot as well. And you see how that can kind of just instantly adjust or overcompensate 100%. So mitigate. And from here, we'll take a deep breath in, palms together, holy palms kiss, and drive the meaty part of our palms behind our head. Again, if we could get, and perhaps you're noticing with each repetition, we get just a little bit deeper, and it feels just a little bit more comfortable. Still heat, but less activated. It's like we're waking up a lot of parts of ourselves that we're sleeping, Trying to walk on a sleeping leg is a difficult task. Trying to carry on sleeping shoulders is a Sisyphean task. Oh, but I just got caught up here. We can release all the way back to the ground and send that foot right on back to behind us. We're going to drop down, bending just our elbows. Everything else can pretty much stay where it is. Bending just our elbows and tucking our toes. All the way to the ground. Feeling the accentuated but deep stretch. And again, driving our palms into the mat and forward ahead of our nose. And adjusting the tailbone so that it's driving directly parallel behind us and not into the ceiling or into the ground. Into the ceiling is probably into the ceiling's fun and fine, but if you're compacting into your lower back all the time, that is not what we need. And we drop the hips down. We can raise the chin up, bring our gaze down to the mat or floor underneath us. Drive palms into the mat and forward, again, reaching past the top of your mat or past your nose, past your face, past that parallel plane. I'm going to inhale, send energy into the palms, drive the hips up and back, and we can come to a variation, whatever variation needed for your down dog. be it on your toes or on your knees. As long as you have mindfulness about your shoulders and mindfulness about your knees. Take a deep breath in, acknowledging the giving structure of the wealth of this body that we are experiencing all of these incredible sensory experiences and data inputs in. Ideally, with your gaze in this, would be upon oneself, but behind you is also fair. Just don't look in between your thumbs. I feel like that's not fun for the neck. Sometimes it's my knees or the top of my thighs. Sometimes it's just my toes. Take an inhale and bring your eyes toward the top of the mat, and we'll walk ourselves to meet our hands in stable parallel structure again, with the top of your thighs, bent knees meeting in some way, gracing the upper half of you to find agreement. We take in all of the structure on a big inhale, drawing all of this energy upward with us. And exhaling and release, allowing it to also take part and participate with the earth, feeling those two fluid structures within and without. Because you are just as much a part of this earth as the earth is a part of you. And you are, in fact, a key part to the integrity of nourishment of you and of the space you take up and the land that you're on. Dang. Take a step back with your right foot and the grace that it leads with. And again, acknowledge, much like a sculpture, the articulation of your hips in this position. If your hamstrings are tight, you might feel tightness in your knees. Again, bending your knees is kind of always healthy for you. Locking them doesn't really seem to do many favors. However, if you are to lock them, you can feel where it is ultimately really tight. You'll feel hip flexors, you'll feel behind your knees. This is a very simple but informative positioning. You find parallel quality in your hips, and maybe that means it doesn't feel even. You've had to, bend a knee and drive one hip just a little bit more forward to find evenness, but not shakiness. Take a deep breath in with your hands on your hips and ensuring that your upper body stays taut and straight. Hinge at the hips and bring your chest toward your toes. Again, don't lock the knees, but be very mindful of what is starting to, or what may rearrange to accommodate such an extreme angle. You may notice that the knees bow out or bow in on any given leg, and that is a matter of, again, activation of either stability here and that foot, or stability in the pelvis and in iliacus kind of muscles. So flexing the inner thigh will bring the knee inward. Flexing the foot or grounding into the foot will bring the knee outward. So leaning in this position, I'm going to turn on my inner thigh so that it adjusts my knee inward and that I maintain this very inline structure. And bring my upper body back upright. We're going to point our toes to the ceiling and just pivot on our heels to the opposite direction. to, I'm at an angle to you here. So I'm going to drive this hip forward. And then I can notice that the tops of my thighs are parallel, my hips are parallel. And I do have this bend now, because my heel is also touching the ground. But my hips are a stable structure. The bend is not a problem. Take a deep breath in. We're going to hinge at the hips again, keeping the chest upright and integral. And feel, oh yeah, this is a tight hamstring. And feel the quads activate. Feel your inner thigh heat. Feel your calf muscles light up even to help align and stabilize your knee to support such an extreme angle. And take an inhale, bring our upper body back upright, and we'll turn and we'll point our toes to the ceiling yet again. Turn on our heels to face a long end of the mat. We're going to point our toes to the sky, and we're going to reach them out to the sides, whatever is comfortable, so that you can still, so that when you bend your knees, they are still in line. They're still checked over. We're going to place our hands on our knees, but not so that we can dump the weight into it. I still have lightness and airiness, and I don't have so much of a bend in here that it is painful. But we are going to use our hands and our knees and our thighs to gauge the depth, right? Because we can go a little bit farther. We could get parallel. Because as we gauge how far we can go, we also need to be very aware of the alignment of our pelvis at this point to maintain stability. Yes, we have expansion here, but we do have a singular point here. As we drop down, drop our pelvis down in between our knees, we're also going to roll it toward the front. And that will start to activate more of your legs, and that will start to feel more in like inguinal areas of your pelvis, and innervations and very subtle muscles that don't often get used. Your innermost ab muscle, for one, is often forgot about, but needs some strengthening. So see how I'm not in some extreme angle, but I am very aware of my pelvic alignment. I'm going to show you from the side so that it's obvious. We're here. We could go far, but I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to be here. I'm here. You see how it even disappears in that plane because we are here? That is the interesting thing, is when we find alignment, it's almost like harmony can also be like canceling out. It balances out in that way. So again, it's not overcompensating, but it is accommodation. And accommodations happen on both sides. Overcompensating overshadows. Funny what the body can teach you about interpersonal relations. But so we're here. We're here. We're just going to find whatever extremity we want comfortably with that. If you can sway and you want to sway, go for it. But be very mindful of your alignment in that, so that you're not cracking. You know what I mean? But from here, we're just going to drive our energy. Again, no way. Push into your toes, so that it just lifts your heels just enough that we can turn them forward. And then we bring our chest parallel to the ground. Again, maybe this isn't a palms touch the ground situation. Maybe we've got some bends in the knees so that we aren't hyperextending our hamstrings or hurting ourselves, so that we have some stability and we can, in fact, feel specific parts expand while others maintain integrity. Take a deep breath in, parallel with the ground, and exhale, drive your eyes to sweep the ground and look at any given point behind you, but far away from you. Think more just the opposite point of whatever you were just looking at. Take a deep breath in and sweep yourself back up and exhale like a pendulum. Find that point again and see if you can sink any deeper in it. We'll inhale, bring ourselves to a stable point, whether that's your hands on your knees or on your ankles or on the ground in some form or another. From this split and bend fold with safely bent knees, we will drive energy into our palms. We'll drive energy into our left outside foot, bending our knee ever so slightly. Then we can relieve our right foot enough to sweep it underneath, just like so. And the non-use leg will find familiar form behind it, just like so. And look at that, we've got a whole bunch of new, more right triangles and parallel lines, with your right foot meeting the top of your left thigh and sort of fractaling the shape. Perhaps you are not flat on the ground. Perhaps one of these stays, or both of these knees stay kind of upright. Don't forget that you can use your hands to bolster you and to help maintain stability in the fluctuations of weight and in different stacking systems than we're used to, especially if this is new for you. This your body is communicating in a different language, and it's going to show you the sounds that it makes and the sounds that it struggles with, and how you can harmonize those things. So again, accommodation over overcompensation. Looking directly at me, you can feel this far back hip is sitting more down. What I want you to do is bring all of that energy like a torque toward this top knee so that your hips become the parallel line at the bottom of that triangle, sort of slicing directly through that. You'll feel the difference in how much more you'll feel it in the opposite hip. You do not have to lean into this. This may already be plenty, and we're using our hands to bolster and keep this sail upright so that we are fluid and buoyant and sailing strongly ahead. If you so choose to lean into it, please be mindful, and do not rush into it. You do not need to kiss the ground at this moment for it to know you're there. And before you lean too deeply into things, make sure that you can maintain an upright chest. Make sure that your chest still, again, like a sail, has the breadth to catch wind in it before you go sinking too deeply into something. Is there ease in your shoulders? We've got all this energy in the hips. Is there ease in the shoulders? These are two structure systems that, again, are influencing each other. The Annamaya Kosha is often interpreted as a literal thing, but it is an amalgamation of subtle things as well. Now, easy transition. You can use your hands to bolster you, send energy into the earth, and you're just going to lift your knees and send them to the opposite direction, acknowledging the duality of the situation that we are in, and acknowledging the fractal responses of the stability that we maintain. Again, triangle situations, parallel lines, and we're going to, again, note the heavy dump in this far hip. Drive that forward so that it's parallel with the other hip, and so that we maintain a healthy, almost weightless upright, because there is so much stability from the ground up. Sturdy boat, hefty sails. Carry me forth. And again, if you want to, by all means, go deeper. But that chest should maintain like its own face, parallel and always looking you in the eye. Take a deep breath in. Bring those knees back over like a windmill into our first set of triangles. We're going to bring this back foot, grab your left ankle. We're going to carry that forward and set it down right in front of you, right in line with where your hips are, yes? And we can very gently do the same with our opposite foot. Don't get too comfortable slouching. Maybe this is where we pop the booty so we maintain a strict spine and or a stable spine and elongated spine and expansive spine. We're going to take our two pointer fingers, wrap around the big toe, and we're going to push our heel toward the wall or surface that is in front of us. Now you may find, just like I was, my shoulders collapsing. Maintain a straight spine. You'll feel that sort of push the hip back into the joint. And you can push your big toe against your fingers as well to feel that joint articulate in a specific way. And we'll set it back down. It does activate. Oh my. You'll feel it. You'll feel it. We'll do the same to the opposite foot, driving the heel toward the wall and driving the toe into the fingers. We can maintain a micro bend if we'd like. We do not want to lock the knee out. Glutes on fire. We can extend both heels to the wall or surface opposite us. Recognize that here is also a place where you can greatly articulate the pelvis, and that dictates very much the level of expansion that we have, and how limited or non-limited we are to some degree. We don't need to go super deep on this, but we do want some symmetry and some continuity. Take a big deep breath in, carry energy and palms up to the sky until palms kiss. Should we try to reach the meat of our palms behind our head while maintaining a straight spine? And release. But when you release, carry it all the way down to grab the feet. And again, maintaining a very solid, comfortable bend. There's no reason to attempt a perfect pike position through means of force. This, much like when we are standing, is going to maintain the same principles of parallel lines rather than, touching your nose to your knees. Bring your ribs to the top of your thighs. Bring your chest parallel to, like books meeting on a shelf, parallel to the tops of your feet. And you can choose to play with your toes if you want. However, the big toe does directly innervate and activate the glute muscle. So if you feel instability, pressing into the toes helps restabilize that. Absolutely. Key point in balancing. Now we hug those toes and pull them in deeply and back to the source. And we are allowed to arch here, and we can arch beautifully here because we're going to roll to our backs gently, hopefully. Please don't fall. Uh, to our backs and bringing our feet parallel to the sky. Again, looping fingers around the big toes. You'll notice the second you do this and press into it, you'll also feel your lower back or butt start to dig into the ground again. This is a key point that I have found a profound wealth of regulation in, because now we're not elongating the spine on this imaginary plane. Now we're able to elongate the spine with the collaboration and affirmation and agreement of the floor. We find release, we find joy, we find a little bit of fluidity. Maybe that's just extending one foot into the other. Again, never locking the knees. We need fluidity. We don't need to be so firm a structure and so rigid and so definitive. Again, beyond the literal quality of the Annamaya Kosha, is against the compulsion to correct, against the obsession of perfection, uh, against the illusion of all of those things. Uh, in a childlike mind and state, who are you? Who do you get to be now that you don't have to be any one of those things? And with that, we'll bring our feet together and our knees together and wrap our hands firmly, wrap our arms around them like a big hug, holding tightly to that realization. Who do you get to be now that you've stripped away all of the literal things that never really made you who you are? And also the limiting ways that we box ourselves in, that you can only be this one way because you have been this before, or you can only be this one way because this is what they have seemed to believe before. Maybe we were meant to be unbelievable. Maybe we were meant to believe in who we are, not what we are. And that seems to go much, much deeper. Infinitely so. In this position and holding on to all of this information, caressing the geometric structures and inspiration and creative life that we've breathed into movement today. This position also helps you massage the organs that digest toxins and nutrients alike. And when you find sufficient play and massage by assistance of whatever space you're taking up and ground you are on, and you can gently roll yourself to your left side, because the Annamaya Kosha is poorly defined by Westerners as this literal food sheath. Uh, we have filled our bellies with knowledge and ocean, and this position also helps stimulate the organs needed to digest. Take this time to take as many big, deep breaths as you need. that you can feel so that you can feel taken care of and uh, wrapped around this experience as well. Do not rush to anywhere. You can stay exactly where you are. This is the perfect place to be. A very important element opening of opening any circle is closing it. And I do think that's something that's generally lacking in a lot of yoga classes, the ways in which we can ground this information. Um, so I'm just going to do some simple Elm rounds and Rama healing mantra since we are at the surface of digging into a colonial wound, really. Um, so stay where you are and just let the sound uh, hopefully help you find equilibrium in that too. Apadamapatanam dataram sarvasampadam lokabhinamam shriramam bhuyo bhuyo namamyaham. Apadamapataram dataram sarvasampadam lokabhinamam shriramam bhuyo bhuyo namamyaham. Apadamapataram dataram sarvasampadam lokabhinamam shriramam bhuyo bhuyo namamyaham. Aho, Ashe, Ashash. May this bit of information serve you as a never-ending fountain to constantly come back to. May you continue to practice out of love for yourself, and practice in various forms in life, out of love for yourself and out of learning in its purity, out of desire to know the truth, and so that we may create in the balance out of honor and benefit to our resonance on this web and our shared experience in the great mystery. May your Annamaya Kosha be renewed and nourished, consciously so. Thank you for sharing this with me. We've got much more to come. And with that, I will see you next time. Tonada koi.